Hello, and welcome to another episode of Keeping Abreast with Karen on this Mammary Monday. Joining us today is Sherling Werner. Hi, Sherling.
Hey, Auntie Karen, how are you?
Very, very well. Thank you. Sherling it has been a past honoree of ours at Sip to Save, and Sherling came into my life about 15 or more years ago via my niece, Becky. Didn't you and Becky go to X-ray tech school together?
We met in 2004 at X-ray school, so it's been about
Oh,
16.
wow. Oh, wow.
And
Yeah, that is longer than I had anticipated. Well, you began your careers together and you have formed this fantastic lifelong friendship now. And your careers began on the North Shore of Lake Pontchartrain.
yes, ma'am, we both did our clinicals and got our first jobs over at St. Tammany Hospital in the North Shore. And during school, we actually worked together waiting tables and in transport at the hospital. So we've had a lot of fun along the way.
You have, and I do remember you guys getting your brand new whips right after graduation, tooling around town like
Oh,
the
yeah,
professionals that you had become.
we would have known.
Well, I love that you call me Aunt Karen, and I love that your now husband, John, calls me Aunt Karen too. It's very endearing.
Well, we wouldn't call you
So,
any.
well, thank you. So, uh, anyone who goes through a breast cancer experience or cancer experience in general um, knows that it is unique to that person, and um, it's like a thumbprint, basically. But Sherling, your story is not only unique, but it has a boatload of twists and turns and ironic outcomes. And we just want to hear your story about your journey today. And can we start from the beginning where I remember you sharing your grandmother had been diagnosed with lung cancer, and it was of great concern for you, and you all were very close. Can we start there?
Yes, my grandmother did have lung cancer. I grew up most of my grandmother living in the house with me, whether it was we were living with her building a new house or she moved in with us. And it was not only her, I have a long standing family history of cancer. So it was always an open subject in my house. My parents never shied away from talking to us about family history of cancer and preventative measures. I'm actually as far as we can count back, fifth generation of breast cancer. My great grandmother had breast and ovarian cancer. She had four daughters. Of those daughters, two had breast, one had ovarian, one had colon. All four of those daughters had at least one daughter with breast cancer, then my mother, and then myself.
That's just an unbelievable thread of family history. And I know a lot of folks don't realize, maybe some of our listeners don't realize, that thoracic cancers are typically connected. If you have breast cancer, there's a chance you will have lung cancer, there's a chance you will have colon, ovarian, etc. So it sounds like your family history has touched on all of those thoracic cancers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, my mother was a big knowing your family history so that you could better navigate your path of what you should do in the future as far as screening and preventative measures and just knowing what you would need to do if you had to make any decisions in the
Hmm.
upcoming.
And and as an X-ray tech and a medical professional, you were very, very aware of your body, and you're a health nut. You're the picture of health. You've always been a gym rat, and I know you run, and you're very conscious of a healthy lifestyle. But while you were planning your wedding at a very tender age of 25, what unexpected discovery occurred?
Right, so I was 25. I was about 10 months into our engagement, so obviously the wedding plans were starting to get tied up at the end. And at the end of a workout, I just kept feeling an itch in my breast. It was just the oddest thing. It was like a deep itch I couldn't get to. And so when I went to scratch and rub around, I felt the lump, and I was like, That doesn't feel like things normally feel there. I've done self-exams multiple times in the past. I had fibrocystic breast. I knew the difference. Just something just didn't feel right with it. So, I did a more thorough self-exam that night. And, luckily, working in radiology, I was able the next day to go in and be like, hey, somebody mind taking a look at this for me? Like, I told the radiologist what I was feeling, and he told me to go ahead and get my doctor, my GYN, to send over an order for a mammo with diagnose and treat. And basically that's giving them permission to, do further testing if needed. So we went ahead and did a mammo and an ultrasound, and even with that, they weren't completely convinced it was something, but wanted to go ahead and, biopsy it to mark it in case it's, fibroadenoma, something benign, so it wasn't going to be regularly biopsied in the future. And we were very surprised when 7 days later it came back positive for invasive ductal cancer.
And that mammogram that you had was a 2D mammogram. And because at the time, 3Ds just were not readily available just anywhere. So big wedding plans put on hold. Obviously, and you had a lot more pressing things on your mind at that point. So you and John put getting married into a fast forward gear, and tell us a little bit about that day. I really love this part of the story.
Well, John and I have been together for many years. He was in school still getting his master's degree, and so we weren't in a rush to get married initially. So we were engaged at this point, 10 months, like I said, and we had gone and seen multiple general surgeons and plastic surgeons, and I knew that my mom knew a justice of the peace, and we just talked about it and felt like the right thing and the next step to do was on the way to go see our next surgeon. We stopped in and got married. It just felt we both wanted each other to know we were fully committed no matter what was going to happen with this. And he also knew what my wants were going to be in case we got into a situation where decisions had to be made and I couldn't vocally, make those.
And that speaks volumes about the kind of man that John is. And he really is a
Absolutely.
Fabulous guy. But I like where you guys stopped and purchased your wedding bands to meet with the Justice of the Peace.
I honestly don't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll remind you of this part of the story. You guys stopped at a convenience store and stopped at the gumball machine.
Oh, I totally forgot about that. Yeah. I didn't have his band. I had my engagement ring. I totally forgot that. Yeah. We stopped at a bottle of water and they had that gumball machine there. And we were like, you know what? Well, does this have to make do?
And so it was a random ring. And do you remember what the ring looked like?
It was a purple plastic ring with a heart on top.
Yes. Yes. That was pretty awesome. That was pretty hysterical. And it also lends to the idea you do have to keep a sense of humor when you're in a crisis like this, or you will lose your mind.
Absolutely. The sense of humor and the bumps along the way is what makes it keep going and for sure.
Well, I do remember you coming up the driveway, that very long driveway, with your news and trying to make a plan of action. And you decided to get a second opinion just because it was a good idea with some newer technology, which happens to be 3D tomosynthesis mammography. We were working with Dr. Stephen Rose at Memorial Hermann in Houston, and you very kindly obliged and had your first 3D done in Houston, which he ultimately used in his trials and his studies. So once Dr. Rose collected that data, was his opinion concurrent with the information you were getting in New Orleans?
Absolutely. And going back to my history of working in diagnostics, this was my first 3D mammo I had ever seen. Obviously, like you said, it wasn't out there yet, and
Hmm.
I able to
And you were
see.
in the business, so this was new technology for you.
Right. And I see lots of different types of images on a daily basis. And so I was able to see what my mass looked like on a regular 2D mammo. I had an MRI of my breast. I was able to see what it looked like on there. And seeing the tomo, it was comparing, you know, apples to a cucumber. It was nothing
Hmm.
similar between the 2D and 3D mammo. You know, you were clearly able to see the tumor. You were able to measure it more accurately, see the edges more. It was definitely a lot better diagnostic quality, and I'm so glad that that's becoming the standard with women now, because otherwise, you know, if I wouldn't have worked in this field and been more persistent, I could have been brushed aside for my age alone, and
Yes,
or if just going by the 2D mammo.
yes, indeed. That's absolutely true. Upon your return to New Orleans from that trek, what was your course of action? What happened next with surgery and reconstruction?
Well, the consensus was pretty similar between Houston and New Orleans, so I decided to go back home to be
Hmm.
at and be comfortable. And so um, I opted to have a bilateral mastectomy with reconstruction at the same time in one surgery, and knew I was going to have chemo right off the get go. During surgery, though, they were not able to get as clean of margins as they would have liked with my tumor, and ended up having a positive sentinel node in the surgery as well. So because
Hmm.
of that, I ended up having to have radiation as well. So
Hmm.
I had surgery, and chemo came first,
Hmm.
and then radiation to follow, which through the process, maybe 3 or 4 subsequent surgeries because of different complications that can arise with anyone that you don't plan for. But in
Correct.
my treatment, my final radiation treatment was May 25th of
Hmm.
11.
Hmm.
It's a long, long treatment, December 1st to May 25th, but
That is a long period of time to go through your treatment, and it also wears on you. It's one of those things that either breaks or makes a relationship, and it was obvious that you and John became closer, your bonds were stronger. He absolutely adores you and was
absolutely
ready to go through anything with you.
he was. And you know, if looking back and even during it, there was a lot of days where I feel like it may have been harder for him than me because he didn't know what he could do to help
Mhm.
me feel better because, you know, I wasn't feeling well. I would just be quiet. I'm not one to be overly emotional. And if I were to start crying for no apparent reason, he really didn't know what to do with me. But
And caregivers sometimes are at a loss, and there's I think there are more avenues for caregivers to get advice than maybe when you went through that and when I went through that, thank goodness. Um, but yeah, it's very hard on the caregivers to see their loved ones and they feel so helpless.
right. I think that if there would have been more options for him to have help, maybe therapy or something, an outlet of some sort, he definitely would have benefited from it. I think at the time he was so focused with me, he didn't really look to see if there was any options, and I wasn't thinking about that at the time either. But
Well, you
he,
just can't. You just your brain is like a wet sponge. You can't make good clear decisions because your brain cells are being killed along with everything else. It's very indiscriminate.
right, right. But no, he was amazing through the whole treatment, still is.
Well, how did you shop for a reconstructive surgeon? How did you go about that?
Well, I knew of a few in my area that I went and saw, two on the North Shore. But to be honest, one of our radiologists is the one that told me, is like, you have to go see Dr. Sullivan at the St. Charles Breast Center. He's the guy you want doing this. And so I saw one in Houston,
Hmm.
and On the North Shore and ended up going to see Dr. Sullivan across the lake in New Orleans. And he really was amazing. He was very compassionate. He talked to me about all the different options. I looked him up, read about things that he had done. He actually has a lot of pioneering with the flap surgeries. And it made me really comfortable that he even had a point of view of it. You don't have to do anything right now at all. He wasn't trying to pressure me into doing any surgeries. And I felt very
That's wonderful.
had my best interests in mind.
That's good because that's not a surgery you want to rush into. You want to have some time to think about it um, because it's physically altering and you want a good outcome. It's not something that you want to jump into and just hope for the best.
Right.
You want a good one shot at it and be done.
Hopefully.
Well, Sherling, we are probably out of time for today, but I want everyone to join in with us next Monday to hear the second half of your story because there's more to tell. And so we're going to say goodbye for now. And don't forget to demand 3D.
Absolutely. Demand 3D, 100%.